Hey everyone, I'm here today to talk about House Bill 2020, which is due to be voted on in the House, the Senate, then sent to the governor's desk for signature. It is a cap, trade, and invest bill, and I want to give you the breakdown. Cap and trade is a market-based approach to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. House Bill 2020 aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 45% below 1990 emission levels by 2035 and 80% below 1990 levels by 2050. By 2050, this would reduce the equivalent of burning 1.2 billion barrels of oil. The largest polluters in the state, a third of which are oil companies, would be required to purchase pollution credits to cover their emissions. Now keep in mind, this isn't going to be your favorite brewery or your local grocery market. This is going to be normally large multinational corporations. The bill requires permits for any business that emits more than 25,000 metric tons of CO2. And to put a number and a measurement like this into context for you, I live almost 20 miles from where I work. I have a household size of 2. And in one given year, we produce about 40 tons of CO2. So just to reiterate, the bill would require permits for any business or entity that emits more than 25,000 metric tons of CO2. So this is not going to be a bill that affects ordinary citizens. It's not going to require ordinary people or ordinary businesses to be buying these types of permits. The reduction process comes into play by implementing a cap on emissions over time, and there will be fewer permits available. This will cause companies to either reduce their emissions, spend more on permits, or buy credits to offset their emissions. This bill differs from the idea of just limiting emissions by integrating the reduction into our economy. Oregon would make an estimated $700 million a year from selling pollution permits. This is money that would otherwise not be in our state. Oregon would have the leadership position on greenhouse gas reduction and reinvesting at the polluter's expense, but they would not be alone. Currently, there are 10 states that have successful cap and trade programs. These 10 states are home to over a quarter of the United States population, and they account for about a third of the United States gross domestic product. These states are Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and California. All we really have to do is look at these existing economic models to see how successful these programs have been. According to the Berkeley Economic Advising and Research Report released, this bill would increase Oregon's GDP and create tens of thousands of jobs. In every state with a cap and invest program, there are growing economies, falling emissions, stable energy prices, and thousands of jobs created. The proof really is in the pudding. This bill is something that climate activists, farmers, public health officials, legislators, unions, and scientists have been working on for over 10 years. Seeing as there are only a few weeks left of the legislative session, I'd like to talk about the future that lays ahead of Oregon if we do nothing. A longer fire season is already being experienced, on average about 2.5 months. There is due to be an increased amount of wildfires and wildfires that consume greater amounts of area. Economically important wine varietals may be compromised as the growing season warms. Snowfall and snowpack accumulation are projected to be historically low, threatening agriculture as snowmelt arrives earlier, causing the dwindle of fall and summer water. Seasonal winters are expected to be a little wetter and summer drier, with increased frequency of heavy downpours causing soil erosion and flooding. Shifts in climate will threaten the stability of timber, like the Douglas fir and the ponderosa pine. Reduced snowpack will cause a warming summer, fall stream flow, threatening fishes that we depend on. The main health impacts are likely to be drought, wildfire, heat, and infectious disease. The top health concerns will be poor air quality, poor water quality, respiratory illness, occupational and recreational hazards, heat-related illness, residential displacement, contaminated drinking water, water insecurity, income loss, economic instability, and mental health impacts. Vulnerable communities will be low-income households, indigenous communities, private well users, people working in agriculture and outdoor recreation, firefighters and first responders, children and pregnant women. The above list was compiled by Megan Fagundes and Alan Jornet of Southern Oregon Climate Action Now. If you're interested in reading the full 16-page report, I'll include the link below with my other sources. Now, to all who claim that capping greenhouse gas emissions will cost Oregonians, like my state senator Herman Beartrigger, I ask, how much will agriculture, forests, and fisheries destroyed by climate change cost us? The Oregon Climate Action Program, which is nicknamed House Bill 2020, has been designed in a way to benefit those who have the most to lose from global warming. The Department of Environmental Quality estimates the program would raise $550 million in the first year. An estimated $202 million would be targeted for the Climate Investment Fund that promotes projects in clean energy, agriculture, and forestry. You may ask, how does this translate to jobs? There will be coalitions and committees in place that fund job readiness. An example would be workforce development programs, on-site job training. A brief example of clean energy jobs are construction, engineering, design, administration, custodial, road crews, manufacturing, accountants, salespeople, and so many more. As you can see, these are good-paying jobs and potentially union jobs. Educational opportunities would also be in place for a just transition. Installing sustainable energy resources, an increase in education, upgrades to transportation, retrofitting Oregon homes, sensible forest management, etc., will give us the ability to create thousands of jobs. Rural communities have the most to gain from this bill because the majority of the investments will go to communities most heavily impacted by climate change, which are communities like mine in Josephine County. The utility bills for low-income households will be reduced by weatherizing homes and increasing energy-efficient heating and cooling. It will provide funds for households to have access to community solar projects, upgrades or new construction or of any energy-efficient transportation. It will save Oregonians $2 billion annually, $2 billion every year in health costs after the year 2030. The bill seeks to help forest and agriculture industries by appropriating 20% of funds raised to help support these industries. The Oregon Climate and Agricultural Network, which represents over 250 agriculture stakeholders, including farms, ranches, vineyards, and forest landowners, support House Bill 2020. They state that House Bill 2020 will provide incentives to farmers, such as upgrading irrigation systems to be more efficient using less energy and lowering costs, adding on-site solar, wind, geothermal, or biogas electricity to independently generate energy with no cost for fuel, fueling up vehicles close to the operation. Most farms have electricity, but not diesel pumps. Adopting practices that sequester carbon in the soil, which improve soil health and increase productivity. They go on to state that California has allocated $197 million to help farmers, commercial nurseries, and loggers acquire cleaner, heavy-duty trucks to agricultural pump engines, harvesting equipment, tractors, and other equipment. Their program will cover 65% of the cost of a cleaner, new or used heavy-duty truck, and up to 80% of other equipment. These are the types of investments we should be making to agriculture here in Oregon. To wrap together all of the above, I would like to cite Pacific Power's testimony in support of this bill. The House Bill 2020 would help establish the state's climate goals, caps greenhouse gas emissions economy-wide, and creates a flexible, cost-effective compliance mechanism, recognizes the impacts that climate change has on vulnerable populations and prioritizes investments in those communities around the state, dedicates funding in a way that balances mitigation, sequestration, adaptation, resilience, and transition strategies to benefit our people and economy, strengthens and enhances energy efficiency and renewable energy investments, accelerates transportation electrification opportunities, and invests in natural and working lands, protects low and fixed income communities by providing credits and prioritizing investments to reduce energy burden, creates strong family wage jobs and protections for workers, includes strong accountability and oversight for the program, and creates new and innovative economic development opportunities across Oregon, including in our tribal, rural, and coastal communities. There are only a few short weeks left of the legislative session. The next steps of this bill are to be voted on in the House, then to the Senate, then to the governor's desk to sign. This is where we all need to work together. For example, my Senate and House representative are siding with the 100 large corporations on this bill in opposition. I urge you to call your legislators today and explain to them why the passage of this bill is important to you. Feel free to use any of the information in the video or any of the links below. You can reach them by dialing one phone number and inputting your zip code. The number will automatically transfer you to your legislators, and that phone number is 503-773-6620. That phone number again is 503-773-6620. Thank you for listening. Please make the phone call today.